Hey there, everyone. It's Chris McDonald. This is, I believe, number 1 of 3 in this fall series. This is getting to the starting line. We're going to be doing in a week the finish line, and then the third week we'll be talking about courses. So I hope you guys like the new graphics. We're excited about it. All right, so we're going to be starting this series with the new start line. And this new start line, and if this goes too slow, I might move out of this kind of view, but we're going to go through the hybrid approach. For those of you that joined us for the past 2 weeks, I believe, we've kind of mentioned about the hybrid approach. And then we're going to go through some registration options. We're going to go through Bibs and Bibs setup and RaceJoy, some packet pickup options, ideas, concepts, and then we're going to talk about the starting line and different options you have there, and then finally we're going to go into timing. So keep in mind when we talk about all of this, this is going to be a high-level overview of most of these topics. So if for some reason, let's say you need more information on how to set up like a virtual challenge, we've done Timer Tip Tuesdays on those. And so they have all been recorded and are available. And so if you do need more information about any of the things that we talk about, just shoot us an email and we will send you back the video or the blog post or things like that on the topic. So first, going into the hybrid approach. And for that, we're talking about on-site, virtual, and challenges. So we've described a lot of these before, but right now what we're trying to do is give you the tools so that you can talk to your race directors, or for those of you that are race directors also, so you can put on a successful event. So why to encourage this? Obviously, right now, especially with things going more indoors, we do have rising COVID rates. And I know for a lot of folks, their COVID rules or their regional rules have already started changing. For others, they haven't. But athletes are also hesitant about what to do right now, kind of on two folds. One, they're hesitant because so many races have been canceled this year. So there's a consumer confidence issue there. And secondarily, they're hesitant because of just general safety. And so just keep in mind that you are going to need to over communicate. I think we talked a lot about that a few weeks ago. All your plans, if you have a COVID response plan or anything like that, or a cleaning plan or a safety plan, just share that out to athletes. And then the hybrid race also offers options that appeal to local officials, not only the participants, but also the local officials, because it shows that if things change, that you can easily pivot to handle the event. So the virtual is a backup plan, also gives you a way of reducing issues in terms of potential refunds. And then it also broadens your reach. So many local events or even regional events, people move away and they can't come to your event anymore. And it goes without saying that if you push hard marketing on a social media level, you can extend that reach nationwide or even globally if you want to. And then the challenge options, you can really get people interested that maybe aren't keen to go, like, say, run a 5K or run a 10K, either in person or virtually. This is more, like, gives them a way to just exercise in general. And just having those other options gives you gives your event additional revenue streams. And for those of you who say, well, I'm just a timer, just keep in mind that if you are offering services, if you are offering to help make the athlete experience better, or help market out using the tools within RunSignup, that's worth money. And so you need to build out what that value is in your contracts. But if you're helping out on the virtual side, you should be making sure that you're compensated for that. I wouldn't say you're going to get paid as much as you would if you were timing a normal race, but you should make sure you're compensated. So again, we're just encouraging you to make sure your races are adding these options so that they have a successful year next year. So I'm just going to skim through these. This is all recorded, so you can go back and pause later. I don't want to take too much time going over things that you guys know tons about. But like we said, the three main types of the hybrid options are the on-site, which is defined courses. Traditionally, this is a single day scored event with time. It's chip timed or timed regardless. Then there's the virtual race anywhere option. This has obviously become incredibly popular throughout the pandemic and is a great add-on option for you to offer, especially since the setup for a virtual race anywhere is not that challenging. And we'll get to that. Actually, I'll mention it right now. If you have events that are using like a live event or an on-course event that's using RaceJoy, strongly consider adding a virtual race anywhere option, just because it's so easy for you to set up, and it can engage people that can't make it to the actual course. So again, providing value, and for those people who aren't close, you can give them a point to engage with the event. And then the final one is the virtual challenge. And again, we have, I don't know how many webinars on challenge and challenge setups. Matt Avery did one, I believe it was last week, and he went into great detail on how to set up challenges, how to set up badges, and just tons of different aspects of the challenge platform. So again, adding a challenge is a bit more work, but the reach seems to be a bit farther for the folks that aren't interested in doing just a normal virtual 5K. So from there, we are finally getting to the starting line. So before we do that, though, I just want to bring up, and it's just really one slide after this, and that is about staff management and safety. We're going to talk a lot about the event and how you can make the event better and how you can set up the event for the athletes. And it was kind of had to pause at one point and say, well, let's not forget about you and your staff. And so just in terms of staff management, just keep in mind, and this is not that these points are not that athletes aren't being safe. It's that in most scenarios, you're asking the athlete to wear the mask until they start racing. So the only people really close to the athletes when they're not wearing masks are likely going to be the timers. So just something to consider, that when you or your staff are around these athletes, they might not be wearing masks at that time. So you need to make sure that you and your staff are taking the necessary precautions to limit your exposure. And a couple ways you can do that. One thing I know that I've seen implemented well, and that is getting to the race site early. Yeah, I know, getting up earlier is not fun, but if it means that you're safer, what's 15 minutes? What's 30 minutes? I know it's brutal when your wake up call is at 3 or 4 or something like that in the morning. But if it means that you can set up and like go back into your timing vehicle or something like that, so you're not exposed, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it gives you a peace of mind that goes a long way. That goes the same for teardown. And just some people, I know you're ready to get out of there, but it might not be the worst idea to let people clear out. The good news is at events right now, there's really not a post-race festival or party or hangout session. So there's less people around when the last person finishes, but I would just strongly advise you just being safe in that regard. And then having extra PPE for your staff. So a lot of people now have reusable masks or buffs or whatever they feel comfortable with. I would just advise to have, disposable PPE, whether it be, masks, gloves, hand sanitizing equipment, stuff like that, just so you're certain that that you and your staff are being safe. Also, considering timing remotely or timing removed from participants. So not everybody's able to do this, and I understand that. But for those of you that can, consider putting out equipment that are on 3G or 4G LTE, so you don't have to be hardwired plugged into the finish line. Time out of the vehicle instead of the timing tent. Timing tents are usually open at least on one side, if not all four, and you're just exposed. So I would just consider moving back into the van. You can move or timing vehicle. I shouldn't say van, but you can hopefully be as close as possible to the finish line, if not right in front of it. And you might be able to manage the course slightly so that is more easily, you're more able to see things from the vehicle. So just something to consider. Also, removing any touch points that are unnecessary. A lot of events are really keen to have result kiosks with printouts or iPads that they can scroll, or Chromebooks where you can go look up results. At this point, I would just strongly advise you to not do that. It's a touch point. It is unnecessary. I would just strongly advise you to push results live to the web. And then if you're pushing them to your website, you're also getting some exposure from athletes that might not otherwise go to your timing website. So it is kind of a win-win in terms of safety and marketing for you. And then I would also limit the printed pages. Obviously, race directors might want a printed set of results if they're going to do an award ceremony, but if they're not going to do an award ceremony, ask if it's okay if you send it to them via PDF. You're already pushing stuff live. You likely have a save option for PDF in your scoring platform. Race day scoring and race director have this. So consider that as an option. And then you can always offer RaceJoy's GPS timing and support to help out remotely. So now we're going to go into registration and race setup. I think all of you at this point have probably not only seen registration pages, but have seen the RaceJoy Rocks event. It is a cool test event if you want to go play around. But in terms of some things to consider, and again, we're not going to dive deep into each one of these. We have plenty of material on all of it. So if you see something that you don't know about, shoot me an email, chris@RunSignup.com, and I will send that back to you. So each one of those options is a different race. So you have a virtual, an on-site, and a challenge, and they all have different setup steps, and they all will require some sort of management on your part and the race director's part. So within the Race Wizard, your virtual events are going to have unique setup requirements, which are done by the timer. And so the event type is going to need to be set to virtual challenge for the challenge and virtual events. You're going to need to make sure for your on-site events that it is set to on-site. And races with expanded race dates, just make sure those dates are correct. If it's a live event, make sure it's correct in the Race Wizard. If it's a virtual event, make sure the dates are correct both in the Race Wizard and in the virtual results configuration tab under Race Day Tools. So if you do not have access to the Race Wizard, you'll just need to confirm all of that with the race director. So just try to be in communication in advance of that. And you'll also want them to confirm that in step 2 of the Race Wizard, especially for your virtual Race Anywhere options, that the step 2 race distance is correct, because that's what's going to be pulled in to RaceJoy. So then some other items are bibs. The big thing with bibs is, and we kind of tiptoe around how you should do it, so we're not telling you exactly what to do. But realistically, if I would tell you to, for every single virtual event, you should have automated bibs turned on. A number of timers and a number of big timers go in and manually do it, and invariably there is 1 or 2 people that's missed. And so I would just strongly advise you to set up the automated bib assignments, and that is the first option underneath bib assignments. It's automated, or it's bib assigned at time of registration. So, and I also would make very sure that your bib ranges don't overlap, or if they do overlap, that you share the bib numbers across the pool. You should, for those virtual events, you should customize your digital bibs. And that's under the bibs, the third option down under bibs on the RaceJoy tools. And then you should set up your automated communication of digital bibs. And in order for this notification to go out to the athletes, this has to be done prior to assigning bibs. So before you go in and turn on automatic bib assignment, you do need to make sure that your digital bibs is, the design is all set, and also that your the notifications are turned on. That won't be done retroactively. And then virtual results configurations. This again is under RaceJoy tools for the timers. You need to ensure the configurations are set up correctly. There's a lot, again, on how-tos on this. It's straightforward for the most part, unless you want to make a very, very complicated challenge, and then it can be very, very complicated. I like to remind people that if they're getting confused on the setup, there's a really good chance that the athlete's going to get confused as to what they're supposed to do, and then the timer's going to get, again, confused as to how they're to help them. So if you're getting confused, either A, reach out to get help, or B, try to simplify the process. It doesn't have to be incredibly difficult or complex for it to be an effective challenge. So by adding the milestone badges, it will make your life a bit easier. Again, Matt Avery's done a couple of really good webinars on that, and there are a lot of support tools available for you on those result configurations. For RaceJoy, you want to make sure you enable RaceJoy for all events if you plan to use it for any. This is actually one of the things that comes up the most recently, and that is, let's say you have an in-person option that you're using RaceJoy for, and you also have a virtual component. People aren't turning on RaceJoy for the virtual component, and it's kind of leaving that virtual group in the dust, and they're emailing us saying, hey, why can't I get into RaceJoy? And it's because it wasn't set up for the virtual athletes. So even if it's setting up a Race Anywhere option, it's going to go a long way to add value for those virtual athletes. So you don't have to set it up for every registration option. You just have to set it up for the unique course options. So if you have like a 5K adult with a t-shirt, a 5K adult no t-shirt, a 5K youth with a t-shirt, and a 5K youth with no t-shirt, you only need one of those to have the course. And then you can use virtual configuration tools to pipe everyone so that they can run that option. Just a reminder, the dates you set under the virtual results configurations, they do determine the dates that RaceJoy will be available, so you do need to verify those dates. And then on that step 1 page, you under RaceJoy, you will want to make sure you enable mobile results. That way people can push results out of RaceJoy to RunSignup. And the reason why we just talked about bibs is because presently athletes, when they run in RaceJoy, they have to put in their bib that is assigned in RunSignup in order for that result to push up to RunSignup. So just keep that in mind. Some other miscellaneous things that you'll want to make sure on the registration and race setup. you will want to make sure you have a communication schedule through RunSignup's email platform. And what that means is just regularly reminding people about the safety precautions that you're taking, whether it be by going virtual and having that backup or in person. And so another thing to remember, it's funny because a lot of folks that are coming back into real racing right now, we'll get an email and say, oh, the check-in app's broken, it won't work. Well, it's because they haven't used it in so long, they forgot that you have to turn on or shift the dates from last year's dates to this year. So just make sure you, in quotation marks, turn on the check-in app, which is just going into the check-in app under Race Day Tools and setting the available dates for the dates you're trying to use it. So another thing is to remember to turn on shipping validation. This only is valid for the United States, so keep that in mind. But what it does is it cleans up and verifies the athlete's address for shipping, and it suggests a certified shipping address. That way, you have less sendbacks or bounce backs when you mail things out. And personally, I would consider limiting shipping only to the US, or you can set up additional cost by location. But if you do neither, if you allow for shipping to go anywhere and you don't charge more to ship to like Canada or the Netherlands or something like that, you're going to get hit instead of like a few dollars. You're going to be looking at $20-25 per shipment. And it's great. It's cool to say you have athletes that are competing in other countries until you look at the fact that you lost money on it. So just something to keep in mind as you're setting things up. So moving right in for Bibs and RaceJoy. So again, for digital bibs, ensure digital bibs are on for all virtual events. You do need to turn on bib notifications to emails and create the digital bibs before assigning the bibs. And I would suggest sharing the pool across all events so you know that there's no duplicate bibs. And then take some time. I know some people just go to the general creator, but if you take some time to create a branded bib or mimic the real bib to include sponsors, it's a great value add for the event. And these are things that either do one of two things. You can charge for this service, or you can just make yourself, we've used this term before, more sticky. And so by doing something like this, you're making it harder for the event to say, want to go use another company because you're doing so much for them. So these images down below are, the left-hand image is the back end of the digital bib setup. And you can see the 1, 2, 3 and the participant name block. And then I registered for this event, so you can see my name and my bib number 99 if I'm on the participant search field and I click on my bib. So I can print this out, I can share it on Facebook. It's a really cool tool. Again, we've done webinars on how to set that up, so feel free to go search for that. On the RaceJoy setup, you're going to want to verify the virtual result configuration setup correctly. And in doing that, you need to verify the dates used in the virtual result setup are correct. That is what RaceJoy tracking uses. So like we said already, turn on RaceJoy for all events if you plan on using it for any. The Race Anywhere option is a very simple setup, and the management's not super complicated. And it does increase the value, especially for those virtual participants. So you can do a test race of RaceJoy where you set up a separate test race to ensure specifically for the on-site events how it's going to work. You can also, a number of timers will set up once they know everything generally, how everything works, they'll open the results submission for virtual events a day early and then go out and test it themselves. And this way you can see how everything works and what the athlete will experience. But the biggest thing is like on day one, and we're gonna keep saying this, and that's because We've yet to start pushing out all of the notifications that we get from athletes, but that's going to be happening very, very soon. So if you're the RaceJoy certified timer for an event, very, very soon you're going to be getting these notifications. And so if you're monitoring RaceJoy on day one, you can see if anything's going wrong. So if the first person makes it through the entire course, you're pretty sure everything's going just fine. So I would just, especially for a month-long event, just double check that those people are making it around the course, there's no errors or issues, and people's results are pushing up to RunSignup. And so if you don't know how to do that, which I'm going to shake my finger at you because you should know how to do it by now, and that is you go under RaceJoy, and then the very last option is monitoring, and there's a blue button that says race day monitoring, and that pulls up the map that's in the middle. And I know it's not flashy and blinky like Shelly and James usually do on their presentations, but you can kind of see the flashes and blinks around each one of those blue dots. And so all those people are currently on course, and so they're being monitored. And then I was going in and looking like, oh, well, I can see all of these results coming in to RunSignup. So so just again, something to consider when you are on day one of your event, that you're going to monitor that first person around each course. So now on to packet pickup. And so obviously, I mean, if you've not yet had a post start of COVID real event, packet pickup is a little different. Like this image might look normal, but I mean, to have everyone in masks, hand sanitizer out, plexiglass, I mean, all of it is slightly different. So just keep that in mind. So you need to have a plan for social distancing. And so what that means is you need to spread out the check-in stations if it's possible. And you need to have a plan to manage or limit crowds and enforce that social distancing. Whether that's a lead volunteer that's just requesting people back up. I mean, I would personally make sure you use cones, flags, dots on the ground, whatever you can. And people are fairly used to standing on the dot. You know, they're doing it at the grocery store, they're doing it at the bank, they're doing it at like Lowe's or Home Depot. So it's not out of the ordinary for them now. If they see that, most people are pretty keen to stay 6 feet apart. You can also consider mailing out packets, but there's 3 things that you need to make sure you keep in mind. One is you're going to have extra cost. One is you have a decreased lead time for orders. And so that means your bibs have to be done earlier. If you're doing the shirts have to be done earlier. If you're doing whatever you need to do in advance, it has to be done potentially almost a week earlier. And then you have I mean, there's always something lost in the mail. So you do have to have extras for the possibility that things are lost. So then you also need to make sure you're using the check-in app for efficiency. So twofold on that. You can go completely touchless from person to person. It doesn't mean that there's no contact of something passed across, because obviously at a real event, you're handing them at minimum a bib. But it means that they don't have to pass something back and forth, and you can look them up quite easily. So you can turn on QR code scanning of the digital bibs and QR code scanning for their registration. So keep that in mind. If you want to learn how to set up those options, we have, again, multiple webinars on setting up the check-in app. So you're also going to, and this is a big one, make sure you upload your configurations onto the cloud within the check-in app so you can push that across multiple devices. If you try to do each individual device separately, invariably you're going to miss something on one device, and it could potentially foul things up. So also with packet pickup, consider providing the shirt and giveaway at the end of the race. I have seen this at a lot of races so far post-COVID or post the start of COVID, And it seems to be a really effective way of limiting people's walking back and forth. So they don't have to go back to their car or find a place to hide things. They can quite literally just come up, grab their bib, and go, and they can start. And so, and then when they finish, they then go to another place that they're handed their t-shirt or whatever their giveaway item is, and you could have a hole punch or something like that, that you designate their bib that they have received the thing that they're supposed to receive. So just wanted to give you guys some visuals of how you can do packet pickup. Obviously, these are from very early on. I believe these might be Todd Hinderlong's images. But you can see that he's sectioned off people, and so they only have a one-way in and one-way out. The same on the other side, where there's stop points and one direction. There's a plexiglass shield in between the athlete and the volunteer. And then everybody has on masks as well. So here's how the Richmond Marathon set things up. So they have their masks are required area, and this is the bib pickup area. And just over here to the right, you can't see it, but that's the post race where you get your t-shirt, and this is the start finish line. And so people walk up, and you can see the dots on the ground right here. And so they walk up and grab their bib, get RaceJoy set up, and go run. They come back, and then they come right over here to the end, which is where they get their finisher's t-shirt. So, and this is a different way to set things up. So you can see there's about probably 15 feet in between these two stations with plexiglass and a little spot underneath for things to get slid back and forth. So I do have a video. This is from Race Day Events. And so I'll play this a couple times. This is where they check in, and as soon as they check in, they go in and start. So again, we can see, let's see if I can get the pause button. There's no exit right here. You go in, check in at packet pickup, and then you go straight in to the corral and start. And off you go. That way, that limits people coming back and forth, and you can see everybody waiting before they start with their mask on. Let's see if I can make it go to the next slide now. There we are. All right, so start lines. This is obviously the weathered start line of Boston, which unfortunately didn't happen this year. So there's a lot of different plans for start lines, and it kind of is dependent on what you have available to you. So the first point is that you're supporting social distancing. And so you can add multiple course options, whether they be the same distances at different locations or different distances so people aren't close together. You can also increase the date for the event to spread things out. It doesn't necessarily have to just be the date. It could be the times as well. So instead of having a normal, let's say 2019, you had a 5K with 1,000 people. Everybody started at 8 o'clock and everybody was on the course by 8:10. Now you might want to say, that start line's open for 4 hours if possible. Obviously that's not possible for everyone, but just something to consider. So, and then you, from there, you can set up staggered starts and corral times, etc. And then you want to determine your event start logistics. So is this going to be a single day or is this going to be a multi-day? Is the event on closed roads? And if it is on closed roads, what time must the roads open? And that's something to discuss with your race director. Because just because you rented or you're paying for the police for 3 hours or 4 hours doesn't mean you can keep the roads closed that long. Which might mean that you need to move to a park or off-road course. And then Also planning for enough equipment, power, and staff to man multiple splits if need be. So it's just, there's a lot of moving parts with events now, a lot more moving parts potentially. So I listed out 6. It's not, this is the first 3, but that's not to say that these are the only start line options. So the first one is mass start, where everybody goes once. The pro of this is it feels like 2019, man. It's great. And everybody's through the start line, no stress, all's good. The bad part of this, use your brain. It's COVID-19. Like, this is not a good idea. Please, please, please do not do this. So the second one is a limited wave start or corrals. Just an example, again, like people are doing different iterations of this all around. But 10 athletes every 2 minutes. The good part about that is the athletes feel like they're racing each other. True, it's only in groups of 10. But the bad part about this is setting up waves and corrals can be very confusing to people, especially if you're giving small groups of people very specific times where they have to start. So just keep that in mind. We then have time trial starts, which is, again, examples, 1 athlete every 10 seconds. The good part about this is the athletes are spread out and there's less contact. The bad part is the start can take a lot longer depending on the event size. And some athletes really don't like time trial starts because it feels less like a race against other people, and it just feels like a race against the clock. But in terms of time trial, you could easily have, like, if you have enough equipment, you could have multiple different time trial starts going off at different intervals to push people through faster and have shorter lines. So next 3 are a grid start. So this can be in conjunction with wave starts. The grid start is basically everybody starts at once, or the wave starts at once, but everybody's 6 feet apart. So you make either a matrix on the ground with cones or chalk or tape. Everybody gets through the starting line fairly quickly. The bad part about this is kind of dependent on how you're timing and how much equipment you have. So I say that because you must time off of chip time if you're doing this, because otherwise the folks in the front have a very unfair advantage to the people in the back who might be 100, 150 yards back. So just keep that in mind, that if you're going to go that route, you do need to use start mats. An open start finish time, or an open start finish line, sorry. For an example, you have a 2-hour window for everyone to start and finish. So if they're going to run 20 minutes, they could easily start an hour and a half in and finish an hour and 50 minutes in, and they're still considered a finisher. So the pro on that is athletes can start whenever they feel comfortable. The bad part there is there could still be a lot of running groups and friends that run together. I actually experienced this personally at an event. We started the first 50 in a matrix and then allowed for the next 150. We gave them 20 minutes to start. And as soon as we said you can start, but please use your best judgment, I almost had to close my eyes because almost 150 people started at once, which was not our intention at all. We really wanted people to spread out. But so the open start finish, you just really need to make sure that somebody's out there managing and asking people to move away from each other. There is some trial and error here, but there can't be much error in this day and age. It'll make it to the news, and you don't want to be a part of that conversation. And then you also have the multi-day event with an open start finish. For example, the race course is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The positive here is there is ample time for any athlete to spread out incredibly far from anybody else. The bad part is it's a multi-day event, and you're going to be out there for a very long time. And you also have lost opportunity costs because your equipment's going to be out there for a very long time. So just keep that in mind. If you do start moving towards a multi-day event, it can be very taxing on your staff. And it's a challenge, but with a big enough staff and enough planning, it can be done very, very successfully. So here is one start finish. This is the start line right here. And these folks are starting, and you can see they're running together. There are small groups of people, but not big groups. To put it in perspective, this event has 5,000 people registered, and we're watching randomly in the middle of the day, just 2 people running. You can see somebody else coming into the finish line right here and another person behind them. So again, this is an example of a multi-day event with an open start finish. And these folks had plenty of time to choose a place where, you know, they weren't going to be on top of other folks. So again, we do have a couple people here and there together, but they likely came together to begin with. So again, this is one option. Let me see if I can. There we are. So here are some others. I pulled these both off of personal events, and then there was a slew of pictures from people on social media that were sharing their experiences. So I believe this is Jim Gerwick's event where he dropped down cones and asked that everybody wear face masks. There was a video online, but you can't save Facebook videos. But yeah, so he's got cones that everybody stands on, and when he says go, he starts them one row at a time. I believe this is Steve Del Monte's event, same kind of concept. They have cones where you start on the cone and work your way down. So very, very similar concepts here. It's not by chance. So similar concepts means it's likely working. So here again, they had strings down and people were following in a row. People were on a matrix here, but there was some crowding around. So just something to keep in mind. Here's Jim's cones without people on them. And I believe this is another one of Jim's races where he put survey flags that you can get from Lowe's or Home Depot on the ground to portion people out, because can't use survey flags out here, and it's way easier to put those down than cones for grassy events. So this is Run Far, I believe, and they also have cones. So they have them broken down, and they have people walk down one at a time and start off of those cones. Not sure, I don't remember who these two were, but again, you can see people are lined up on the X's on the ground, and they were starting one row at a time. And then this one, same thing. They use gaffer's tape or duct tape on the ground. Same kind of concept in terms of lining people up. So again, just pointing out, this is very, very similar concept over and over and over again. Why? Because it's working. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now we're moving from the timing to, from the start line to some timing considerations. So I broke this up into 2 different ways of doing things. One is kind of the digital or scoring setup, and the other is physical. So things to consider. One is timing using gap factors are kind of the way things are going to be. If you are not familiar with how to time with gap factors, again, we have a webinar on that, but also reach out. We can help explain it to you further if need be. So with this, the start lines are left open for longer periods of time. So you're going to have finishers complete the course before athletes have even started or checked in. So one thing to remember in race day scoring, if you have different distances, you need to set up different timing locations or separate timing locations by event, so you can use varying gap factors. And what that means, again, this has gone over in the webinar on gap factors, but let's say you have a 5K and a 10K. Even if both of them are open from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. or something like that, you'll need to set up, like, let's say it's a shared start finish, you'd set up a 5K shared start finish and a 10K shared start finish. And the reason behind that is, if you put that there's 2 occurrences at each one of those locations, you can set the gap factors for different different values. That way you can say the gap factor for the 5K is like 13 or 14 minutes. Whereas the 10K is, whatever, 28, 29 minutes. But if you set a 10K to 12 or 14 minutes, you could get a very errant read of like a 20-minute 10K. And conversely, if you set it only up for the 10K and you had a 5K that ran, sub 25, which would be fairly normal, you would end up filtering those out by gap factor. So again, if you have different distances, you will need to set up different timing locations by event. If you're not using gap factors, you can use corrals to define your start times. You can set these up at the RunSignup level or race director and race day scoring level. However, chip start is much more preferred. And I say that because it's much more reliable than assuming an athlete's going to show up and start when they're supposed to. If people start showing up or you're late, it can just make things very challenging in the scoring process in an already challenging environment. So it's just something if you have the equipment, I would time with chip times. And then in terms of reports, especially with race day scoring, if you're timing with gap factors, you should exclude clock times in the reports. It's not going to make any difference. Clock times aren't going to make, not any difference. It's not going to make any sense because somebody that wins could have a much slower clock time because they started much later. And then consider setting the clock to midnight on race morning, and that way when you go back and do data review, you can see elapsed time from a set point. And then also, if you're not able to do on-site timing, you could always offer RaceJoy as a backup. So this is more timing in terms of equipment or physical stuff. So one is I suggest using disposable tags over reusable, if at all possible. This does decrease your exposure to both staff volunteers and athletes. When you don't have another choice, you have to use reusable chips. Maybe you're doing multi-sport active timing or something like that. I would strongly advise you having a pre and or post race cleaning plan for those chips. For example, one that I've used is 2 dunks and a dry, and that's I have 2 bends, and when the person takes the chip off, the volunteer picks it up with tongs and sticks it into the first solution, which is water, bleach, and soap, and then they pull it out and dunk it into a water rinse, and then they leave it out to dry in the sun. And by gosh, at this point we have to hope that that's doing a bang up job of killing things. But at the same time, if I can get away from, or if anyone can get away with not using reusable, you should use disposable. Also, two of the things you might not think about if you elongate start finish times, and that is power and data. So you do need to make sure you have adequate power. So you're going to be out at timing locations for longer periods of time. You might have been relying on the batteries in your decoders for 2.5, 3 hours for a 5K previously. You set it up, an hour and a half before, an hour for the event, 30 minutes. Maybe you don't get to it until after the award ceremony. But if you're there for 4 hours, it may not make it that long because you're probably going to set it up again 90 minutes beforehand. So now you're looking at 5.5, 6 hours of that running on battery. So just consider having generators at your timing locations, or move your split closer to power sources. A lot of times you can find like outlets on the wall if you're near like a school or church or something like that. And in some cases, solar power is available. You might have to get creative, but I know some people are able to use solar power at events. And then also consider using 3G or 4G LTE modems in the decoders for remote data access. The point of this is you don't have to be physically hovering over the start finish line, so you can be further away and less exposed. Now, if you're going to do this, you do need to make sure you have coverage in the area, number one, And number two, that your data plan will cover the length of the event, especially if it's a multi-day. So if you're going to leave decoders on for days and days and days, just keep in mind you're going to burn through some data. So again, just things to keep in the back of your head while you're working on things. So I did want to share an alternative approach to bib assignment. This is, before we get to it, this is a fairly advanced way of doing things. You need to have some pretty good staff in place, but I think that it works very, very well for a single registration and then letting people choose if they want to do in-person or virtual late in the game. And so the way this works, and I might have to explain it backwards and forwards because it might make sense from the get-go. So what you're going to do is you have all registrants are assigned a virtual bib number in the series. So and then once they get that bib number, so let's say we give them 50,001. We don't tell them what their bib number is, but we do send, and this is for everyone that's included in both the in-person and virtual event. And we say, hey, if you're planning on running the virtual option, here's how you find your virtual bib number. And so what that's going to do is it's going to point out only to the virtual people. Most of the people that are planning to run in person aren't going to care. So in this circumstance, in all of the events in RunSignup are set to virtual race challenge. So then the in-person athletes who have that bib number in the 50,000s, they show up to the race site within that start time and finish time window. It might be 8 hours, it might be 10 days. But you have staff there at Packet Pickup, and they're using the check-in app. And the check-in app has a setting that allows you to change the bib. And so every single person that comes to Packet Pickup, you know they're wanting to run the actual course and be timed. So you check them in and change their bib number from the 50,000 unit number to like a 1,000 unit number, like an actual bib number. You can do that with QR codes on the bib, all that with the cameras that we already talked about. And so they go run and they use RaceJoy if they're going to use RaceJoy as well on that. They use RaceJoy with that new assigned bib number. So the key things to know here: one, all the events have to be set to virtual race challenge as the event type, and two, the check-in app settings have to be correct. So what'll end up happening is you'll still have a virtual result set. And all those people, even if they run with RaceJoy on site, will get a virtual result set or virtual result from their RaceJoy data. But your scoring always creates a separate result set. And so you'll have two data points for those people that come and run the course with RaceJoy. You'll have a live timed event data that you actually timed, but then you'll also have RaceJoy data. And the benefit here is if you go in and set up split points and things like that on the course within RaceJoy, you actually can go back in, and if you missed a split, you can actually see in RaceJoy what their split time would be for that, and potentially could backfill data if you needed it. And so again, with that, you do need to make sure that all events have auto assignment bibs turned on and the bib pool is shared. But you leave the bib notification emails turned off for this. And that's because you don't want those in-person people to know their bib number, go into RaceJoy and set their bib number in RaceJoy to the 50,000 number. And so you do need to have both in-person and virtual, like you're promoting both in-person and virtual options here. And this is, for those of you that don't know, if you're just gonna tell, you're not gonna tell everybody what their bib number is. You're going to tell them, if you're running virtually, this is how you find your virtual bib number. And they just go to find a participant, and then this is what it brings up: find a participant, RaceJoy, and then you search for your name, and here's my name under the race. And so they can go do a race anywhere or an on-course option. So I appreciate it. These are obviously longer. It looks like I got really close to that hour mark. So hopefully people are still here with me. Not sure if there's any questions, but before I take any, I am going to say that the next two of these Timer Tip Tuesdays are on December 1st and December 8th. So December 1st is the new finish line, and December 8th is the new race course. So with that being said, are there any questions?
Jamie just was asking if there's examples of races that have done a good job with documenting safety precautions and changes to participants. And I know we have a lot of tools and resources, but I don't know if we have like specific examples.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know of any specific examples, but I mean, I've also found that if you reach out, if you know of a race that's happened in your area, or not even in your area, a big race that's happened, you know, if you ask somebody how much they charge to time a race, they're not going to tell you. If you ask someone to share a safety plan, most people are fairly keen to help out. Now, they might not post it on like social media or something like that, but if you take the time to figure out how to contact the race director directly, or another timer directly, most are fairly willing to share that kind of information. I think everyone, you know, all timers might be competitors to some degree, but everyone wants everyone to be safe, because if events start happening that aren't safe and responsible, then, you know, all of this gets shut back down. There any other questions?
Nope, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us, and yeah, make sure you tune in on December 1st and December 8th. We'll do again, they will be a little bit longer than a normal 20-30 minute Timer Tip Tuesdays, but we hope you found this informative, and we look forward to chatting with you in a couple weeks. Take care.